Hey guys, tonight we're diving, quite literally, into the chilly soil of medieval Europe, where the frost creeps in like a ghost and yet somehow you don't freeze. You're a peasant now, a tired, clever, possibly smelly survivor of winters so cold they make your modern thermostat look like a spoiled brat. No heated blanket, no puffy jacket, no latte to warm your hands. Just grit, ingenuity, and maybe a chicken for body heat. Picture this: snow falling silently over a gray field, wind hissing through the bare trees, and you're not on the ground, you're under it. Well, sort of. Tonight, you descend into your home, carved carefully into the earth, about 2 to 3 feet deep. It's not a full hobbit hole, but it's enough to trick the cold into staying out. Turns out, soil makes a surprisingly solid insulator. It's like the earth itself is giving you a warm-ish hug. You step down into this shallow, sunken space, walls of wattle and daub on either side, the smell of damp straw and smoky hearth lingering in the air. The difference is immediate. Outside, you can feel your snot freezing. Down here, a balmy 45 to 50 degrees Fahrenheit. Not exactly beach weather, but considering the alternative, you take it any day. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, drop your location and local time in the comments. Let's see who's the coldest peasant tuning in tonight. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum. And let's ease into tonight's journey together. You crouch to enter your home, passing beneath a sagging timber beam blackened by years of soot. This house doesn't just sit here on top of the land, it inhabits it. The floor is packed dirt, worn smooth by generations of foot traffic and goats who really don't care about personal space. It's not fancy. There's no front porch, no chimney, no doorbell. But what it lacks in luxury, it makes up for in survival. Building into the earth gives your home natural thermal mass, which historians still argue whether peasants understood intuitively or by passed down trial and error. Either way, your house is a medieval version of passive heating. No fire required, just gravity and mud. Your walls aren't thick stone or carved timber beams. They're wattle and daub, but we'll get to that joy in a bit. First, just look around. The cold stays out because this place is tight. A thatched roof leans overhead like a giant straw hat, and even that roof is angled for a reason. Steep enough to keep snow sliding off, shallow enough to hold in the warmth. Brilliant, right? There's a deep stillness to the air inside, not because it's cozy, more because it's dense. Heat rises, but in here, there's nowhere for it to go. That low roof, that narrow entrance, even the positioning of your home. It all traps the warmth like a medieval thermos. And that heat, it's mostly from your hearth, your breath, and, let's be honest, your family's collective body odor. But that's later. You start moving around, placing firewood near the center hearth and pulling your wool tunic tighter. Your boots crunch over straw and soil, and you're grateful that the bitter wind has disappeared. That's the beauty of building down instead of up. The earth itself is your insulation. Archaeological studies suggest that these shallow, partially buried homes could stay a full 10 degrees warmer than their above-ground counterparts during the winter months. That doesn't sound like much, until it's the difference between losing a toe and just losing feeling in it. You brush past a rough wooden bench, almost tripping over a snoozing dog curled in a corner. Lucky mutt. And here's the thing, the deeper the floor, the more stable the temperature. It's like nature's own thermostat. Under the frost line, the ground maintains a steadier temperature throughout the year. No heat surges, no sudden drops. Just cold and colder, but never deathly cold. Now, some homes even had their floors lined with hay or rushes to add insulation from below. Did it smell nice? Absolutely not. Did it work? Absolutely yes. People weren't sleeping on fancy beds. They were curling up on straw pallets, sometimes with animals nearby. And that bedding was as much for insulation as for comfort. You push open a wooden shutter, nothing more than a thick plank on hinges, and peek outside. It's snowing again. The flakes drift like powdered sugar over a barren landscape. But you're safe here, in your sunken haven. As long as the roof holds and the fire doesn't die, you'll be fine. That said, there are a few problems. Digging into the ground means drainage issues, puddles in the corner, that weird spot that always gets mushy after a thaw, and mice, always mice. But that's a small price to pay for not waking up encased in a medieval ice cube. The way your home nestles into the landscape also helps shield it from winds. It's not on top of a hill or out in an open field. It's tucked along hedgerows, in valleys, behind natural barriers. Trees, earth mounds, even stacks of hay play the role of primitive windbreaks. The village was built not just for looks, but for thermal logic. Historians point out that peasant villages often show strategic clustering around natural wind shelters, a kind of accidental feng shui, but with survival in mind. You sit on a low stool near the fire pit, warming your hands, watching the logs pop and hiss. The walls flicker with light and shadow, but there's no draft. That sunken design, plus the packed floor, plus minimal window exposure, means that even without insulation, you're better off than you might be in a fancy modern cabin with too much glass and nowhere to hide. But hey, don't get too comfortable, because staying warm wasn't a set-it-and-forget-it deal. No, in medieval life, heat was a thing you fought for. Every moment, every night, that fire needs tending. That roof needs patching. That rush floor full of lice by February. But you endure, because you don't have a choice. Your neighbor, let's call him Ethelred, he didn't dig deep enough last year. Tried to build a flashy surface hut with a nice view of the mead fields. Froze half his toes off by Candlemas. He's fine now, mostly. But let's just say he's not skipping foot-warming rotations at the communal hearth anymore. As you lie back, staring up at the rafters, you notice the shape of soot marks on the beams. They're older than you are, maybe older than your grandmother. Generations have lived here, added a little depth to the floor, a little pitch to the roof, changed the angle of the door. Each family handed down small tweaks to the design like sacred knowledge. Nothing was wasted. Not warmth, not wisdom, not even wall space. And that's the unspoken beauty of it all. You don't just live in this house. You inherit it. Not the property, not the deed, but the way it breathes. The way it holds the heat like a secret. The way it lets you wake up with all your fingers still attached. Historians still debate whether these sunken homes were a deliberate architectural innovation or simply a byproduct of needing shelter fast and cheap. Either way, they worked. Long after the castles crumbled and the churches burned, the humbler sunken houses remain, found in archaeological digs from England to the Baltics. Quiet, clever, dirt-hugging survivors of a time when warmth was everything. You pull the wool blanket tighter around your shoulders. Outside, the snow keeps falling, silent and indifferent. But down here, you're not just surviving. You're winning, one smoky breath at a time. You wake just as the hearth embers glow a sleepy orange, your back aching from the straw-stuffed bedding. The morning chill hasn't quite made it indoors yet, thanks to one of your home's more underrated survival features. The smallest windows you've ever seen outside of a birdhouse. They're barely big enough to stick your head through. Not that you'd want to. That tiny square hole in the wall? It's less a window and more a light leak. No glass, just a shutter. Often oiled cloth or, if you're particularly lucky or upper middle peasant, thin horn or greased parchment. It's translucent, not transparent. You can't see through it, but light filters in like a soft, watery glow. And the air stays out. That's the whole point. These miniature windows are a defensive move in the war against winter. The smaller the opening, the less heat escapes, and medieval peasants knew that all too well. You squint toward the wall and notice how the shutter closes snugly into its warped frame. It creaks when opened, but you almost never do. Why invite in wind, snow, and nose-numbing air when you fought so hard to keep it out? Modern architects might criticize the lack of natural light, but medieval design was about priorities. Pretty views and open concept living weren't things. Not freezing to death, that was the aesthetic. Every design choice, from those ridiculously tiny windows to the almost claustrophobic ceiling height, was part of a single mission: contain the warmth, lose the cold. And those ceilings, they are low. You have to duck under support beams as you move through the house. If you're over 5'6", congratulations. You're probably a wizard. But also, you're going to knock your forehead on that rafter again. The average medieval peasant was shorter than the modern human. Sure. But low ceilings weren't just tailored to height. They were calculated to keep warm air circulating close to the ground where it mattered. Historians still debate whether peasants consciously designed for thermal efficiency or if it was just passed down tradition refined over centuries. Either way, your breath hangs faintly in the air like a ghost as you shuffle to the hearth. Even without modern insulation, the tightness of the space does half the work for you. Heat can't escape because there's nowhere for it to go. You pass beneath a beam coated in black soot, ducking instinctively. You don't want another bump to the scalp. One more, and you'll be seeing saints in the smoke. The house is laid out like a single-room strategy game. The cooking area near the hearth, the sleeping platform as far from the door as possible. Every nook stuffed with something warm, dry, and hopefully edible. And surrounding it all are walls that barely breathe. And that's a good thing. You run your fingers along the edge of one such wall. It's not smooth. It's textured, woven. This isn't stone or brick or wood paneling. It's something more rustic and, let's say, organic. You've arrived at the wattle and daub part of the story, but we'll dive deeper into the dirty details in the next section. For now, just feel the draftlessness of it, the silence, the sheer density of the air, thick with heat, smoke, and the scent of ash and damp wool. Outside, the sun is peeking over the trees, but inside, the light remains sleepy. With no real windows to speak of, you live your life by firelight and instinct. Time becomes a scent. Smoke rising means morning. Stew boiling means noon. Ash cooling means dusk. Everything else is just shadow play. You walk over to the door, a heavy, roughly carved slab of oak that could moonlight as a battering ram, and open it a crack. Immediate regret. The cold punches you in the face. It's like someone threw a fistful of icicles down your tunic. You close the door again, fast. Let the chickens wait. The frost isn't going anywhere. And so you turn back inward, toward the heart of your world, This cave-like cottage of warmth hoarded one ember at a time. As you settle onto a stool, you think about how every part of this home has a job. There's no such thing as wasted space or decorative flourishes. Every object, every plank, every breath of warm air is part of the same system. Survive the night. You scratch at the wall again. Is that fur in the plaster? Probably straw. Hopefully straw. It's hard to tell. What you do know is that the wall doesn't feel cold. Not like stone does. That's because it's thick. Not thick like fortress walls, but thick enough to hold in heat and slow down the cruel outside. Peasants didn't have thermometers, but they had senses. They knew which materials held warmth and which let it bleed away. They knew that big windows looked nice but felt like standing beside a hole in the season itself. So they avoided them. Your home, it's a thermal cocoon, and that's worth all the bumped heads in the world. A quirky detail you probably wouldn't expect. Many peasants deliberately didn't install chimneys. Those didn't really become widespread in poorer households until much later. Why? Because chimneys sucked heat right out. Instead, smoke simply drifted up and out through gaps in the roof or near the eaves. Slowly, inefficiently, but warmly. You learn to live with smoke in your eyes if it means waking up with blood still circulating in your toes. You sit again, rubbing your hands together. Around you, you can hear your family stirring. The low cough of someone inhaling soot, the rustle of wool blankets, the unmistakable fart of a goat who's somehow wandered inside again. Everyone looks tired, but everyone looks alive. And in a medieval winter, that counts for everything. As the morning creeps on, the room brightens by degrees. A golden shaft of light cuts through the tiny window, illuminating the thick soot layering every horizontal surface. It's not pretty, but it works. This is architecture for survival. Minimal air exchange, minimal light, minimal heat loss. Would modern building codes approve? Absolutely not. But let's be honest. How many modern homes can hold a stable temperature without constant electric help? Your hovel may be tiny, dark, and stuffy, but it holds the heat like a jealous dragon. And in February, you need every fiery breath it can muster. You stretch, groan, and wrap your cloak around your shoulders. It's not even noon, and already you're planning how to conserve heat for the night. That's the rhythm of your life. Fight the cold during the day, hoard the warmth at night. There's no central heating, no hot water bottle, no sauna. Just stone, sweat, and good old-fashioned planning. One final note as you head toward the hearth. That weird lump above the door? That's a sheepskin flap. It acts like a primitive airlock, keeping drafts from sneaking in when the door opens. Ingenious, right? You wouldn't find it in a royal palace, but in peasant homes. Little touches like that are what kept folks from waking up blue. So the next time someone brags about their energy-efficient smart home, remember your dark, cozy cave of a cottage, warmed by elbow grease and stubbornness. No apps, no gadgets, just tiny windows, heavy air, and the knowledge that sometimes smaller is better. You lean back against the wall and feel it press solidly into your spine. Not cold like stone, not soft like wood, but something in between. It's rough and lumpy, like a dried mud cake, crisscrossed with faint impressions of twigs and straw. This isn't your average plaster. This is medieval insulation, wattle and daub, nature's answer to freezing to death. To build it, you start with wattle, a latticework of woven sticks, bent and bound between upright posts like a basket turned inside out. Peasants would gather hazel, willow, or whatever bendy wood they could find, weaving it tight to make a frame. Then came the daub, a glorious, sticky mess of clay, chopped straw, water, and, let's be honest, more animal dung than anyone wanted to admit. Mixed by hand, foot, or occasionally livestock, the concoction was slathered over the wattle until the entire structure looked like it had been iced with medieval frosting. The result? A shockingly effective wall that could insulate almost as well as modern fiberglass. No, really. Tests have shown wattle and daub structures can maintain indoor temps impressively well, especially when combined with small floor plans and low ceilings. Your humble peasant hut isn't primitive, it's optimized. You run your fingers along the wall again. Bits of hay stick out like whiskers, hardened into place centuries ago. The surface is dry now, but in summer it would breathe, absorbing moisture during rainstorms and slowly releasing it. It's not airtight, but that's the point. These walls weren't designed to trap you in a vacuum. They were designed to balance warmth with just enough ventilation to keep mold at bay. Barely. And you're probably wondering, doesn't it smell? Yes, it does. At first, there's the earthy scent of damp clay, then the hint of straw, and then, well, the barnyard aroma never quite fades. But you get used to it. The smell becomes part of your life, like smoke or wool, or that faint, sour note from the corner where turnips are stored. It's not pleasant, but it's familiar, like the scent of survival. Some walls were finished with lime wash, a chalky, alkaline coating made from crushed limestone. It gave a bright white appearance and acted as a natural disinfectant. That's right. Your ancestors painted their homes with homemade sanitizer. It also helped reflect the little light they did get from their candle stubs and the hearth fire. Still, your house doesn't shine. It smolders. Everything in it, from the timber supports to the straw-packed ceiling, is there to hold heat, not look pretty. Even the floor has a job. In wealthier households, you might find stone or wood, but in your case, it's packed earth, occasionally layered with rushes or hay, swapped out when they got too foul. Which is to say, not often. The walls, though, those are your shield. On windy nights, they creak and flex, but they hold. On snow-covered mornings, they radiate a quiet warmth gathered the day before. You don't thank them aloud, but you feel it. That tactile gratitude you develop for things that keep you alive. And remember, most peasants didn't build these homes alone. Entire villages would band together to help raise a house, lending time, labor, and materials. Your walls are woven with community, smeared with the fingerprints of neighbors who showed up, laughed, argued, and probably cursed when the daub fell off for the fourth time. You glance up at the ceiling again, rough-hewn beams darkened with years of smoke. They span overhead like the ribs of a great beast, sheltering you, pressing warmth down toward the floor. Between them, packed straw and mud, occasionally a spider, always soot. A crack runs diagonally across the far wall, a reminder that even the best daub settles over time. It's not ideal, but it's not catastrophic. You plug it with straw, maybe a smear of fresh clay when it's warmer. It'll hold. Wattle and daub wasn't just for cottages either. Entire manorial halls, chapels, and barns were made this way. The technique dates back thousands of years and has been found in Iron Age settlements. But here, in your 13th century village, it's not ancient history. It's just how things are done. And it works. If you had stone walls, they'd suck the heat from your bones. If you had logs, they'd rot in the damp. But these walls, they've stood for decades, maybe longer, patched and repatched, like the skin of some wise old animal. They keep you dry, block the wind, and most importantly, they don't let the cold in easily. As you crouch near the hearth again, pressing your hands toward the flame, you think about how every part of this home, not just the fire, helps to keep you warm. The walls, the floor, the ceiling, the shuttered window, the lack of chimney, they're all part of the same system. A medieval life support machine made from sticks, mud, and stubborn ingenuity. And tomorrow, when the frost creeps down the doorframe and the wind howls through the trees, these walls will still be here, breathing, cracking, creaking, but holding. Because in winter, survival isn't loud. It's not glorious. It's not even particularly clean. It's muddy, it's smoky, and it smells vaguely of goat. But it works. And in the world outside your door, that's everything. You're not sure when the hearth stopped being a luxury and became a necessity. Maybe it's the moment the temperature inside dips to the same number as your age. Or maybe it's the way your fingertips feel like glass if you step too far from the fire. But here, in your little earth-sunk, straw-roofed hut, the hearth isn't just a warm corner. It's your home's beating heart. It's barely dawn. You stir on your straw-stuffed mat, wrapped in layers of wool and worn linen. The air bites. You can see your breath. You scramble out from under the covers, shuffle stiffly to the hearth, and revive last night's embers with a few careful breaths. One spark, two, then a flicker of flame that grows, crackling softly, casting gold across the dirt floor and the soot-covered ceiling. You survived another night. Your hearth isn't a cozy fireplace like in fairy tales. It's a low, stone-lined pit, set in the middle of the room. There's no chimney, just a hole in the thatch above and centuries of darkened smoke stains curling toward it. You cough, sometimes, but the smoke curls where it must, escaping when it can. The upside, that smoke blankets the rafters and insulates your roof like a giant wool cap. The downside? Well, your lungs probably aren't thrilled. You squat beside it, warming your hands. The fire's warmth is direct and comforting, like sunlight, if sunlight could be controlled. You add kindling, then a log, and you're rewarded with the crack of expanding bark and the scent of burning ashwood. This isn't just a place to cook. This is your family's hub, the nucleus. Everything, meals, mending, arguments, stories, spins around it. By mid-morning, the room feels almost bearable. Not cozy, not toasty, but you can move around without gritting your teeth. Your family, parents, siblings, maybe a grandparent or two, start to gather near the fire, shoulders hunched, sleeves pulled over cold fingers. You all migrate like sleepy animals, drawn to the same patch of heat. And if you're wondering just how warm it gets in here, not that warm. Most medieval peasant homes hovered around 50 to 60 degrees Fahrenheit in winter. Inside, that's hoodie weather, not fling off your blanket weather, but 60 beats 20. And in a world without electric blankets or HVAC systems, that's a win. Your hearth isn't just about temperature, though. It's about routine, about survival, and weirdly, about social life. When the sun sets, people huddle together around this glowing square of life, sharing stew, sharing gossip, sometimes sharing silence. Flames throw shadows that dance like spirits along the walls. Someone might hum. Someone else mends a tear in a wool sock. And always, the pot bubbles. That pot, it's a constant presence, an iron cauldron, suspended from a chain or settled on stones. Its contents change daily. Barley yesterday, maybe cabbage today, a sliver of bacon if you're lucky. The medieval stew pot, or perpetual stew, is a living organism, constantly replenished and rarely emptied. Some were kept going for days, even weeks. One inn in France supposedly ran their stew for 45 years. Historians still argue whether peasants actually enjoyed this eternal soup or merely tolerated it, but in winter, hot broth was liquid gold. It warmed you from the inside out and masked the taste of ingredients well past their prime. And you wouldn't ask what part of the pig that was. Above the hearth, if you're lucky, hangs a simple spit or grill. You might roast a root vegetable, dry some herbs, or, on rare feast days, watch a chicken turn slowly, skin crackling in the firelight. Most days, though, there's just the stew, and the smell of smoke, and the hum of voices, low and soft, like bees in a log. The hearth also doubles as a light source. Candles are precious, expensive, and slow to make, so the fire does the heavy lifting. Shadows are long, faces glow from below, and you learn to read the flame like others read books. Is it high and wild? Too much wind. Low and sulky? Wood's too wet. Steady and bright? Good fire. Good night. Now, here's something that might surprise you. The fire isn't always built on the ground. In some homes, especially in wetter areas, hearths were raised off the floor on a stone platform or packed earth mound. That helped with drainage and kept stray embers from catching in the straw rushes. Practical and less foot burn way. Of course, even with all this planning, fires could be deadly. Thatched roofs, wooden beams, flammable everything. It's a tinderbox waiting to happen. One bad ember, and your whole house could be ash before the rooster crows. That's why ashes were carefully banked at night, often covered in a layer of smothering dirt or damp turf to keep them alive without risk of flames leaping up uninvited. You've probably already guessed, this was your job, the kid's job. Tending the fire wasn't romantic. It was nerve-wracking. One slip, and breakfast is ruined, or the house is. No pressure, but despite the danger, despite the ever-present smoke, the hearth brought a kind of comfort that modern heating just doesn't. Because it wasn't background noise. It was alive. You fed it. You watched it. You planned your entire life around it. And let's not forget the hearth's other job. Storytelling. Night falls early in winter. After supper, when even the pot has gone quiet, the tales begin. Some are local legends, spirits in the woods, the woman who turns into a fox. Some are biblical, some are just strange. A knight fights a snail. A man falls in love with a fish. A saint rides a bear. You listen, wide-eyed, feeling the heat of the fire on your cheeks and the cold of the floor on your toes. One day, maybe you'll tell your own stories here. Maybe your children will listen, and the fire, steady as breath, will keep burning. Before sleep, there's one last ritual. Someone stirs the embers. You spread them out, scatter a few pine needles or apple peels to sweeten the morning smoke. You might say a prayer, not to the fire, but near it, because that's where warmth lives. That's where hope stays alive. And as you finally crawl under your rough wool covers, smoke still lingering in your hair, you take comfort in the knowledge that the hearth will still be there in the morning. Dimmer, maybe, but alive, just like you. You wake from a dream of smoke and embers, the familiar glow of the hearth pooling on the earthen floor. Outside, Twilight battles the cold. Inside, you're cocooned, yet not bubble-wrapped. Instead, you're in a smoky haze, breathing in the heavy warmth and soft grit clinging to the rafters. Welcome to Let the Smoke Rise. Every exhale releases clouds that drift upward, forming a cozy haze under the thatch. Smoke here isn't just pollution, it's a tool. That gray curtain clinging to the ceiling slows heat loss, kind of like an ancient insulation layer. And it doesn't just trap warmth. It smothers insects and helps preserve the roof's straw. A smart multitasker in mud and wood form. But let's be real, it irritates your lungs. Your eyes glisten, tears prickling at their corners. Morning coughs echo in the confined space. That scratchy feel in your throat reminds you that survival often comes with trade-offs. Historians still argue whether the health impacts were worth the protection. The smoke undoubtedly helped. But at what cost? The smoky haze also shaped daily life. You instinctively keep conversations low. Loud speech turns into a sneeze, a cough, a broken moment. You huddle, voices soft, warmed by the amber glow and softened by that ever-present cloud of smoke. It's intimate, almost sacred, and slightly suffocating. Now, here's something quirky. Some peasants believed a little smoke in the home warded off evil spirits. A faint ancient superstition tangled with hard logic. Smoke keeps witches out, an old wife might whisper as she fans the embers. Whether magic or science, the fire-smoke combo had symbolic power too. Still, the smoke layer had limits. Too much buildup and soot becomes heavy. Thatched roofs darkened, wooden beams blackened. You pause to gaze upward before reaching for a poking stick to clear the pit of embers. Soot falls like ashes from a wish, and you pretend you see little dancing people in the clumps. Every few seasons, the roof needs patching. New straw laid atop the smoky old one. Thatch soaked in soot resists rot better, and smoke-treated straw lasts longer, sometimes twice as long. That quality became widely known in your region by the 14th century, prompting villages to share maintenance tactics across miles. Historians still debate whether this was a cultivated practice or simple trial and error. Walking outside, you take a gulp of crisp air and let your lungs reboot. The sun feels sharper. Your eyes sting less. Reality feels like a slap, but you're alive. And your house? That smoky, half-asthma-inducing hut. It's kept you alive another freezing night. You return to light the hearth proper, feeding it fresh logs to burn cleaner and brighter, to compensate for the lingering haze. Inside, the smoke level is lower now, just enough to blanket, not choke. The air feels cooperative, like an old friend that still teases you. This smoky layer also doubles as a messenger system. The moment you hear the crackle and see the gray drift rise, you know the hearth is burning well. If the smoke is too thin, the fire's dying. If too thick, the wood's still wet. A flick of your shoulder, an elbow nudge to a sibling. They learn this signal fast. In that centralized fire and smoke system, even small shifts matter. A single misjudged puff could cool the entire hut. Smoke operates as silent instruction. Peasants live by these signs, exchanging knowledge about wood type and smoke patterns. Details historians still pore over to understand peasant science. Sometimes, the smoke level determines the day's pace. Thick drifts in the morning mean you delay chores like laundry or milking until the hearth calms. A haze at midday convinces you to stay inside, mending socks or weaving baskets. Even your cat, the scavenger prowling in corners, knows to avoid the blackening ceiling, settling low near the hearth where light and warmth concentrate. Smoke isn't just air, it's the center of your world, shaping when you wake, when you work, when you rest. It threads tradition from generation to generation. Your grandfather taught you how to judge its swirl. Your mother showed you how to patch soot-stained beams. It's folklore, science, survival, all rolled into one. As dusk nears, you stand back and observe. The smoke curls, the ember pulses, the fire whispers your name. It's time to poke, to sip, to whisper. You're part of that cycle now. You breathe smoke. You tend fire. You endure frost. Because sometimes survival means embracing the haze. And tonight, that haze keeps you, and maybe your soul, alive. The frost hasn't even melted from the edges of the thatch roof when you rise. Not because the rooster crows or sunlight streams in. There's none of that luxury here. No, it's because of the rhythm, the village rhythm. You're not a freelancer in medieval Europe. You live on a time card made of daylight, tradition, and penalties paid in firewood. Winter mornings are sluggish, not just because you're bundled under layers of itchy wool and animal skins, but because your body is trained to sleep in segments. First sleep, then a break, then second sleep. Yes, you heard that right. 2 sleeps. Historians still argue whether this was a universal pattern or more dependent on class and location. But one thing's clear. Your nights aren't linear. So there you are, wide awake around midnight. The first sleep is over. You lie still, heart slow, breath fogging in the cold. Others around you stir too, your siblings or cousins sharing the sleeping platform. Someone mumbles a prayer. Another scratches at lice. A third whispers about the pigs snorting beneath the floorboards. During this middle-of-the-night pause, you might poke at the embers, visit the latrine, very carefully in the icy dark, or even sneak in a little extracurricular warmth. This interlude between sleeps was often seen as spiritual, intimate, or just plain practical. You make use of it, and then, eventually, drift off into your second round of slumber. Come morning, the rules of the day are strict. Work hours are set by season and sun. In winter, the work window is brief. From 10 a.m. to 2 p.m., that's it. And if you're caught hoeing turnips outside that narrow frame, it's not just a slap on the wrist. Villages had actual penalties. Wooden punishment stocks, lost rations, or worse, shame. Public, splintery shame. These hours weren't arbitrary. They were designed to conserve energy and heat. Working during the coldest parts of the day would be self-sabotage, and doing chores at night. Well, good luck with that and your half-doused torch stub. The work is selective. Field work is rare in deep winter. Instead, you haul firewood, repair tools, tend animals, or help thatch repairs. If you're particularly unlucky, you're on frost guard duty, walking the perimeter at dawn to ensure ice hasn't ruptured the water barrels or killed off weak livestock. Inside the house, it's a cascade of low-energy chores. You twist cords, shell dried beans, patch worn socks, or turn old tunics into layered scraps. Everything gets repurposed. Even burnt-out charcoal can become pigment for the odd manuscript page or wording symbol above a door. But let's circle back to that sleep schedule. Modern folks would call it bizarre, this 2-part pattern of slumber. But for you, it makes sense. The break between first and second sleep is sacred. Some use it to talk, others to reflect, some to do quiet housework like braiding rope or darning sleeves. A few whisper psalms or local legends, drifting into the soft half-lit zone between dreams and dawn. And here's the quirky bit. Some households even scheduled community gossip for this break. In the hush between sleeps, when the fire's low and ears are sharp, information flows. It's like a peasant Twitter feed, running only at 1:30 a.m., fueled by oat gruel and candlelight. Historians still debate whether this practice faded naturally or was squashed by industrialization's rigid clocks. But for now, in your cold little home under the thatch, this rhythm is your truth. 2 sleeps, 4 work hours, a life lived around breath, ember, and frost. Back outside, the village buzzes during its brief window of productivity. You pass old Elfrida stacking dried cow patties for fuel. You spot young Cedric pouring grain into mouse-proof jars in the food cellar. Everyone moves with quiet purpose. Every hour counts. Literally, a missed task could mean less heat, or spoiled food, or hungry sheep. When the bells toll the end of work time, you head home. Yes, bells, not for churches only, but also to enforce curfews and signal fire watch shifts. The village protects its own with a tight hand. If you break curfew to scavenge or linger in the dark, you risk more than frostbite. You risk community suspicion. And that's its own kind of cold. Dinner is early, if you can call it that. Warm gruel again, maybe boiled root vegetables if you're lucky. It's not glamorous, but it fills the stomach. And then comes the wind down. The fire is stoked, the straw bedding shaken out. Bodies gather again into that central huddle on the sleeping platform, like a living quilt stitched from human heat. You stretch, close your eyes, and wait for first sleep to find you again. Your toes curl instinctively toward the warmth of a cousin's shin. Outside, wind howls, but inside, the rules are firm. You've done your part, slept when expected, worked within the sanctioned hours, avoided fines, shared warmth. The medieval clock ticks without gears. It's made of people, breath and bones and schedules etched in firelight. You wake again, as usual, in the quietest hour of the morning, the time when even the roosters hesitate. But something's different today. There's a hush in the house that isn't just from sleep. It's the cold, a new kind of cold, the kind that seeps through the straw-packed walls and settles into the joints of the wooden frame. It's going to be a long day, and you'll feel every minute of it through your bones. First things first, food. Or more specifically, not losing your food. This time of year, preservation is more than a convenience. It's survival. And your ancestors, while lacking refrigeration, were no fools. They turned to earth and ice and clever tricks passed down over generations to keep their food edible through the cruel stretch from November to April. You pull on your cloak, 2 layers of coarse wool lined with whatever soft fiber your family could trade for, and you shuffle toward the underground cellar. It's not fancy, just a pit dug beneath the house, lined with stone or sometimes just hardened clay. But down there, the temperature holds steady, a cool, moist 35 to 38 degrees Fahrenheit. That's enough to keep carrots crisp and turnips from turning. Vegetables hang bundled from ceiling beams, some wrapped in straw or linen, others preserved in ash or sand. Each method suits a different crop. Cabbage heads might be packed in barrels, layered between slaked lime or brine. Apples and pears rest on racks with space between them to prevent rot from spreading. You give each one a gentle check. One bad apple really can spoil the bunch. And here's something clever. Snow pits. In colder villages, families dig deep storage wells into the frozen earth and pack them with snow and sawdust, insulating them from both warmth and decay. They'll drop in sealed clay pots filled with kale, turnips, even meat from the recent pig slaughter, each buried like treasure in nature's own refrigerator. Come spring, some of that snow will still be down there, frosted and intact. Now, you might be wondering how anyone knew what worked and what didn't. After all, it's not like they Googled how to store parsnips in winter. But they did have records. Oral, yes, but also physical. A few wealthier households and monasteries kept vegetable calendars or illustrated guides. Historians still argue whether these were widespread or luxury items. But surviving fragments show sketches of vegetables with timing notes, moon phases, even little warnings like, "Beware of frost at third moon," scrawled in Latin or Middle English. The preservation work is never done. Each week brings another check-in, another rotation. You bring forward the softening beets and repack them in fresh sand. Someone hauls ice from the pond to restock the snow pit. A neighbor stops by to barter. 3 onions for your extra garlic, wrapped in cloth and passed with a nod. The system works only if everyone keeps up. If one household lets their cabbages spoil and starts sharing moldy stock, sickness spreads fast. Let's not forget fermented food. If root cellars are the hardware of food storage, then fermentation is the software. Complex, sometimes finicky, but brilliant. You tend the perpetual stew pot, still bubbling over the hearth. It contains broth made days ago, but kept simmering constantly. Into it goes scraps of onion, cabbage, stale bread, yesterday's bone. Nothing is wasted, and the ongoing heat keeps harmful bacteria at bay. Historians call it perpetual stew. But in your house, it's just dinner. And then there's the good stuff, the ferments. Crocks of pickled turnips bubble quietly in the corner. A bucket of hard cider, sealed with beeswax, sits beside the chimney, slightly warmed by the bricks. These foods aren't just tasty, they're medicinal. Modern science has found that these medieval ferments can have 10 times the probiotics of a modern yogurt. But you don't know that. All you know is that eating a few pickled onions after a long day makes your stomach stop growling. You've heard tales of sourdough starters passed down like heirlooms. Some families named theirs. One man claimed his yeast was older than his grandfather's sword. True or not, never to let your family's starter die. Every day, you feed it with flour and water. Every week, you bake a few dense loaves that taste faintly of smoke and wildflower. One of your more fringe neighbors, let's call him Walter the Wary, swears by burying cured meats in the chimney. It sounds insane, but when you visit, the hams are dark, dry, and smell faintly of hickory and thyme. He claims the soot adds body. You're skeptical, but not enough to refuse a slice when he offers one. Preserving is part science, part superstition. Some villagers hang rosemary sprigs above their root cellar doors to keep rot away. Others chant blessings over the first jar of pickled beans each year. Historians still argue how much of this was symbolic versus practical. Maybe it didn't matter. Maybe belief helped more than bribe. Now, let's talk about the communal side. In winter, food isn't hoarded. It's shared carefully. There's always a family on the brink. A sick father, a failed harvest, a barn fire. When it happens, the village steps in. You might slip them a basket of wrinkled apples. Someone else drops off a wheel of cracked cheese. There's no announcement, just quiet generosity. But don't confuse this with endless charity. Everyone remembers who shares and who doesn't. Reputation is a currency, and you earn it in potatoes and honesty. Tonight, you're assigned to help check the community storehouse. It's a cold walk past the chapel and over the frozen stream. Inside, the building smells of straw and smoke. Stacked barrels, sealed clay jars, baskets of garlic, all tagged with symbols to mark family contributions. A fire is burning low in a stone hearth at one end, and the steward is already there, counting eggs and muttering curses over a leaking honey pot. You and two others check inventory. It's mostly intact. One barrel of saltfish is leaking brine. A wheel of hard cheese shows signs of mold, but the steward scrapes it clean with his knife and mutters, "Still good. Nothing's wasted." Not when snow still falls and planting is months away. When the job's done, you get a thin slice of dried pear as thanks. It tastes like summer, a ghost of sweetness in the bleakness of February. You head home, stomping your feet to shake off the numbness. Inside, someone's ladled stew from the shared pot, and the scent welcomes you back like a wool blanket. You spoon out a chunk of turnip, soft and fragrant. It's not exciting. It's not indulgent, but it's warm, and it came from the cellar, and it's enough. Later, in the dark of first sleep, you dream of strange things, of cabbages wrapped in velvet, of snow that never melts, of apples that never rot. When you wake between sleeps, you half believe you've invented preservation magic. But no, you're just a medieval peasant. A smart one, a careful one, but no wizard. Still, thanks to root cellars, snow pits, and a few jars of bubbling pickled radish, you'll make it to spring. And maybe even enjoy it. You awaken to a cold whisper slipping beneath the door. The kind of chill that reminds you winter isn't a visitor. It's a house guest who never leaves. Outside, dawn is a quiet scream of gray light. Inside, your small world remains warmish, thanks to the invisible thermal defenses of your straw-thatched sanctuary. But winter doesn't only test your walls and hearth. It tests your food, your cunning, your ability to stretch every precious resource. Today's mission? Innovate meals that aren't just edible, they fuel. Every bite counts. Breakfast is simple. A bowl of thick porridge made from oats, mixed with bits of barley and honey you traded for last autumn. You stir it slowly beside the embers, steam dancing like ghosts in the dawn gloom. It's not hearty, it's intentional. You need fuel that burns slow and steady, so you don't collapse by noon into a quivering heap of frostbite and regret. But the real culinary science happens in the communal cauldron that never cools. Yes, the legendary perpetual stew lives again. You ladle thick broth into worn wooden bowls. Meat scraps, root veggies, bits of grain. All flavors melding over days, maybe weeks, never quite depleting. Your mother taught you that constant simmering doesn't just stretch ingredients. It prevents botulism, kills lurking bacteria, and turns leftovers into biome-aiding probiotics. Modern scholars were fascinated when lab tests confirmed medieval ferments from this era contained close to 10 times the probiotic strains of modern yogurt. When she said, "It's good for your gut," she meant it literally. Dinner prep is its own ritual. The fire's warmth crackles under the cauldron. You stir in dried turnips from the cellar and handfuls of cabbage fermented last fall. The stew hisses and boils, sending smoke cues for neighbors. Meals ready. A few even wander over, bowls in hand, because breaking bread, or slurp, is social currency. Here's a quirky twist. In some hamlets, villagers passed around special starter stones for fermenting vegetables. Each household dipped the warmed stone into their brine to jumpstart fermentation, then passed it to the next family. Historians still argue whether these stones actually carried microbes or if it was more symbolic. But hey, community or science, it worked. You find yourself inhaling deeply, feeling warm from the aroma alone. It's spicy, earthy, fuzzy with nutrition. This meal matters. It reminds you, medieval survival wasn't about eating. It was about knowing what to eat, and when to eat it. And that knowledge didn't come from scrolls. It came from listening to elders and trial and error. You help ladle bowls for scrapyard of children dragging their rugs into the fire's laughter-bound glow. Someone drops a piece of smoked fish from the storehouse into your bowl, a late winter delicacy. Fish, salt, and smoke combine to make something almost festive. You might joke, sure, it's just cod, but it's our cod. The stew isn't just dinner, it's emergency rations, medical aid, community glue. It fights scurvy, feeds growing bodies, and comforts cold souls. You marvel at how a single pot can contain stories of hunts, harvests past, yesterday's gossip. It bubbles with purpose. After dinner, the leftover broth is saved in vessels insulated with straw and wool, your own mini cooler. Tomorrow, someone will add fresh scraps, and the stew will live on. It's like a slow-moving creature, sustained by generations of hands and hungry mouths. As you settle back against the wall, bowl empty, hunger momentarily stilled, you feel warm in more ways than one. Because this dinner was shared, cooked not just for survival, but together. And in a winter marked by frozen bones and biting wind, that warmth, that unity, is perhaps the most potent heat of all. You wake to a muffled creaking under your blanket, someone shifting on the platform bed beside you. It's still dark, but the air in the room feels damp and close. It smells faintly of onions, wool, and the tang of smoke-soaked timber. Your breath isn't fogging the air anymore. That's a good sign. The body heat of 6 people in a low, banked hearth does what it can. It's not cozy, exactly, but in this century, it's survival. You reach for the heavy wool blanket, layered with whatever cloth could be spared. Linen scraps, animal skins, maybe an old horse blanket. Your younger sister murmurs beside you, cocooned in a nest of warmth. This isn't just a sleepover. It's a medieval heating strategy. Every person is a space heater. That's not a joke. It's a literal calculation. Clustered together on a raised sleeping platform, away from drafts, close to the fire, surrounded by heavy curtains or straw walls, you generate enough ambient warmth to keep hypothermia at bay. Even a crying infant contributes. You curl closer to the group without thinking, like geese in the snow. Historians still argue whether bed sharing was more about warmth or sheer lack of beds. Probably both. Most rural homes had only one platform, and not everyone even got the luxury of climbing up on it. The elderly, the sick, and the least favored sometimes curled near the hearth on packed dirt floors, close to the fire, yes, but exposed to smoke and soot. Tonight, you're lucky. You're on the main sleeping slab, above the worst drafts. That slab is made of layers, straw, old cloaks, rushes that were swept from the floor and laid again. It's dryish and warmish. But you're not here just because it's warmer. You're here because if someone sleeps alone and something goes wrong, an ember jumps, a roof beam groans, they're lost. Together, someone always hears. The wind picks up outside, howling through the wooden slats. You think the thatched roof above, thick with soot and winter smoke, helping trap warmth inside. The fire was banked low before you all lay down, covered in ash to smolder slowly through the night. When it burns too fast, it wastes wood. Too low, and it dies. There's an art to night fires. You might be wondering, what happens if someone misbehaves in bed? Steals covers, snores like a blacksmith, or worse. In some villages, bed sharing came with rules. Serious ones. There were even fines for inappropriate behavior, especially in multi-family sleeping arrangements. In certain towns, people were removed from the sleeping area entirely, banished to a corner or outside the communal hall if they violated norms. Try surviving that punishment in January. That's the hidden beauty of this strange, tight arrangement. It's intimate, sure, a little smelly, often loud, but it's also deeply human. You whisper stories, trade gossip, share dreams. Sometimes, just the quiet presence of others is enough to ease the fear that comes with a long medieval night. There's even a kind of beauty in the night routine. The way someone always coughs twice before turning over. The way your older cousin quietly prays in Latin under her breath. The way your mother gently brushes the youngest's hair from her forehead. Repetition is a kind of comfort. You drift into first sleep, that early stretch from sunset to midnight. Then comes second sleep, a concept foreign to modern minds but standard back then. Around midnight, folks would naturally wake for an hour or two. Some prayed, some stirred the fire, some visited neighbors or even worked by candlelight. Then, back to bed for round two. Scholars still debate whether this dual sleep cycle was driven by biology, lack of artificial light, or just lifestyle rhythm. Probably, again, a mix. You stir during this middle wake. Your uncle is poking at the fire, muttering about needing stronger coals. Someone else is using the chamber pot behind the screen. It smells a bit, but not worse than the goats in the next room. Yes, there are goats, or pigs, or both. They live in the warmest corner of the house. Not because you're best friends, but because they produce heat. Like roommates, but louder. Animal warmth is strategic. A pig can generate enough body heat to raise room temperature by several degrees. Position them wisely, and they become living radiators. Plus, their breath keeps humidity up, essential when winter air dries your throat until it cracks like parchment. You finally fall into second sleep, head pressed against a pillow of straw stuffed in an old tunic. The wind howls again, but it can't quite reach you. Not tonight. Because tonight, you're sleeping like a medieval peasant, pressed shoulder to shoulder with kin, draped in 5 layers of reeking but effective wool, a smoldering fire nearby, and livestock warming your feet. And you know what? You'll probably survive till morning. You wake to the faint pressure of your sleeping neighbors as dawn's gray light seeps in, just enough to remind you it's time. Outside, the air is sharp, and you can feel the day's cold cloaking everything before the sun breaks the horizon. But inside, you're warm. Not toasty, not snug, but steady, pointedly alive. You untangle yourself carefully from the jumble of blankets and bodies, mindful not to knock anyone into the cold. You crawl to the hearth and check the embers. They're alive, warm and breathing, but not blazing. That's intentional. At this hour, the hearth must whisper, not roar. The flames glow fuels tomorrow's toast and stew, and the embers will last through the next night if treated gently. Today marks the seasonal shift. The snow is thinning, and soon planting will begin. But for now, Your daily movement reflects your survival system. Heading out is essential to gather firewood, tend the frozen animals in their winter quarters, check the communal frost guards, maybe even scrape off the barn's frozen thatch. But leaving the warmth isn't a decision, it's a leap of faith. The irony is sharp. In winter, almost every task is about not enduring certain death by cold. Gathering wood is less nice than life or death. And while you haul fresh fuel for the hearth, your winter wool cloak and hood, treated with animal fat and tree sap, hold steady against penetrating chill. Artisans in wealthier villages might praise their water-resistant synthetics. You might smirk and rub bark smoke across your sleeve. Your hood, with its multi-panel design, was crafted for directional wind, cutting wind chill by up to 60%. Not superstition, just design, but some neighbors still whisper about magical stitching. Historians still argue whether water resistance was a byproduct of materials or intentional craft. You stop questioning, it just works. By mid-morning, you've loaded the hearth with fresh logs. The smoke curls just so, enough to preserve the roof, draw out damp from straw, but not flood the hut with coughing gas. The smell is sharp, almost antiseptic, and the firelight dances across your neighbors' faces, pale and resolute. This warmth is communal, not personal. Your tasks today will intersect with others. In winter, the village operates like a machine. Each person, from wood gatherer to frost warden, moves in sync. You pass by the frost warden checking frozen pipes, greeting him with a head nod. He nods back, acknowledging your burned gloves grin. We're both soldiers in the same quiet war against cold. Then there's the livestock, cows, pigs, geese, all sheltered near the house. Their breath warms the air. Their bodies keep humidity up. Their presence adds to survival. Position matters. Cows go near the center. Pigs, slightly off-center. Geese perch near doorways. They form a convective loop that circulates household heat. Archaeologists have found floor plans from the 13th century revealing these arrangements. Imagine that. Your pig's snout isn't just dinner. It's a home thermostat. You pause by their stable mat, breathe deep, and release a smile. Sure, they're smelly. Sure, keeping them indoors means muck and heartburn. But tonight, when the wind screams outside, you'll thank them. They do more than provide food. They are food and warmth. Multifunctional livestock, your practical insurance. By midday, the sun climbs high. Well, as high as it gets in February. Temperature hiccups, but inside your home, nothing changes. The combination of insulation, hearth heat, compressed bedding, animal breath, and human bodies keeps everything within a narrow band. You're not freezing. You're just comfortably coldish. As afternoon settles, your family gathers. It's time for the communal hall meeting. Warmth sharing rotating tonight. It's your turn to host inside the hall. These communal gatherings follow a rota strictly enforced. Rotate the hosting, warmth, and steam stations so no single household burns through all their wood. Villages were surprisingly hierarchical about this. Being skipped meant cold, and being skipped intentionally? That was scandal. Historians still debate how equitable these rotations were. Elite families sometimes dipped into wealth to gain extra turns. But in your village, the system works. Tonight, your walls and roof will brown with smoke. Your hearth will burn brighter, and neighbors will gather with bowls and blankets, sharing warmth, as well as stew, gossip, counsel. It's no feast, but the night's cold retreats. As you head out to prepare the hall, You pause at the barn doorway. Frost crystals glitter on the trough, smoke drifting above the eaves, and you smile at the small triumph. A village not just surviving, but working winter. By design, by routine, by trust, by sweat and breath. The cold isn't respected, it's corralled, not conquered. And as evening falls, you'll lean into that smoky huddle again, taking comfort not just from heat, but from each other. In this season, warmth is more than temperature. It's community. By now, your senses are honed to the rhythms of this winter world. Every creak of timber, every shift in the wind, every flicker of flame tells you something. You don't just live in this house. You listen to it. It is, after all, as much a survival machine as a home. As evening deepens, you make your way toward the communal hall, thick snow crunching underfoot. Your woolen layers are stiff from days of use and smoke, but they still insulate like champions. 5 layers thick in places, patched with hardened resin where wear is worst, and sealed with tallow. The smell is distinct. Somewhere between smoked ham and burned pine, if you're being generous. The hall itself is already humming. You open the thick timber door to a wave of warmth, human and otherwise. About 24 villagers are already inside, clustered around a raised fire pit lined with hot stones. The hearth here isn't just for comfort. It's science. The hot stones retain heat and radiate it evenly, much like underfloor heating in Roman villas. That knowledge didn't vanish. It trickled slowly through the centuries and reemerged as common sense. Above, the smoke doesn't rise through a chimney. Instead, it clings to the rafters, forming thatch darkening clouds that slowly creep sideways through a smoke hole. This deliberate slow smoke strategy, remembered from generations past, insulates the ceiling and preserves the roof. Let the smoke work for you, your grandmother used to say, her voice equal parts wisdom and phlegm. Tonight, though, no one minds the haze. They've brought their food, usually thick root vegetable stew, maybe some dried meat or foraged greens saved from autumn. It's not about cuisine, it's about calories. Long stewed food is more digestible, and, crucially, the constant simmering helps kill bacteria. Historians still debate whether the medieval peasant knew about microbes or simply followed taste and trial. But whatever the origin, the outcome was effective. Nearby, a group of children sits wrapped in shared blankets on raised wooden platforms. Their breath makes small clouds in the air. Parents cluster beside them, sharing mittens, swapping stories, and occasionally admonishing them not to fall asleep before second sleep. Yes, second sleep. Your body knows the routine. Around dusk, most villagers drift into their first sleep, a few hours of deep, early rest. Then, like clockwork, people wake around midnight for a few quiet hours. This interlude isn't a fluke, it's a historical norm. The middle hours were used for prayer, small talk, intimacy, and even housework. Then comes the second sleep until dawn. Sounds odd today? Blame modern lighting. Back then, your body danced to the rhythm of firelight and dark. Midnight approaches. The hall dims as lanterns are snuffed. Blankets are drawn tighter. Voices hushed. Even laughter fades to a soft hum. You close your eyes and wait. When your eyes open again, it's sometime in that hushed, in-between time. The fire is low, throwing slow shadows. A few figures are moving, tending embers, whispering, stretching. You do the same. There's something sacred about this liminal time. The world outside is a frozen sheet. The world inside is a slow, warm tide. Later still, people drift into second sleep. The room stills. The fire crackles once, then settles. You sleep again. Dawn doesn't rush you awake. It seeps in gradually, coloring the snow with hints of rose and blue. You stretch under your shared blanket. Someone beside you murmurs a sleepy curse about morning frost. Someone else giggles. It's cold, but no one's dead. That, by your standards, is a great night. You shuffle outside with the group. The smoke above the hall curls in lazy ribbons. Around you, life stirs. A pig snorts. A chicken pecks at frost. Somewhere, a child yells about socks. And so, the cycle renews. Winter in the Middle Ages was not survived with brute force, but with community, rhythm, and countless small decisions. You lived inside a system. Each wall, fire, animal, and ritual designed not for comfort, but for survival. So when someone from the future laughs at your smoky clothes or your animal roommates or your strict schedule, you just smile. Because you're warm, and they, with all their gadgets and Wi-Fi and thermostats, probably wouldn't last one night here. Word count, 1010. Wind down begins below. Your breath is slower now. Let it stay there. Let the images of smoke drifting through rafters, of woolen cloaks and hearthside lullabies, settle gently in your mind. The medieval night isn't chasing you anymore. You're no longer wrapped in 5 layers of wool or stirring the coals in the dark. That part of the journey is done. All around you, the cold has faded. The frost on the eaves has melted in your imagination. The hearth's glow is just a soft memory now, warm enough to follow you into dreams. You're lying somewhere quieter, somewhere simpler, the squeak of floorboards replaced by your own breath. The weight of the world has slipped away like steam from a winter stew pot. There are no chores waiting, no snow to shovel, just the hush of time moving gently forward. Let your shoulders soften, let your eyelids lower. You made it through the coldest night, and now it's warm enough to sleep. End of script. Sweet dreams.